The chest arrived, with thunder and cheers. People shouted. Drums roared. They believed the war was over. That was a big mistake. What the people of Eberu did not know is that sacred things do not answer to fear. To understand what followed, we must return to the camp that night, to the moment the chest was summoned. Don't forget that Eberu had already tasted defeat. Yet in fear, the elders chose power over wisdom. Could it be that their hope returned rather too quickly?
The land that started a war. Part 2.
Messengers were sent at dawn. They ran hard, feet bleeding, dust covering their faces. They carried one command only: bring the chest of dominion. The sacred city lay far behind the lines, guarded day and night. The chest rested in a quiet place, watched by priests who kept it covered and untouched. When the order arrived, the priests froze. "It has not been carried into war for many seasons," one said. "But the chief priest commands it," another replied. They prepared the chest carefully. They lifted it onto poles carved from old wood. 2 senior priests, Open and Hainan, were chosen to walk beside it. They were sons of the sacred order, trained from youth to guard what was holy. The journey back to the camp was slow and solemn. Wherever the chest passed, people fell silent. Some bowed. Some whispered prayers. Others stared in fear. When the chest entered the Eberu camp, something changed. At first, there was silence. Then someone shouted. Then another. Soon, the whole camp erupted. Men who had cried the night before now stood tall. Wounded soldiers pushed themselves upright. Shields were lifted. Spears struck the ground. The sound of voices rose like thunder. Hope returned. "The chest is here," they shouted. "Our ancestors have come with us. We will not fall again." The noise rolled across Nakoro and climbed the hills. Across the plains, the Dagana army heard it. Dagana scouts ran into their camp, breathless. "They have brought their sacred object," one said. "The one they say carries unseen power." Murmurs spread among the soldiers. Is this the same power that defeated their enemies in the old days? Are we fighting men, or something more? Even the commanders felt unease. But their leaders were firm. "Stand your ground," they said. "We have 10,000 men. They have barely 1,000 left standing. Whatever they carry, it will not stop steel." Drums sounded. Armor was tightened. Lines were formed. Fear was pushed aside by discipline. At sunrise, the 2 armies faced each other again. Eberu stood with the chest of dominion at the center. Priests guarded it. Soldiers formed around it like a living wall. Dagana spread wide across the plains, their numbers darkening the land. The first arrows flew. Shields rose. Men screamed. The fighting was worse than before. Dust covered the sun. Horses crashed into lines of men. Spears pierced armor. Blood soaked the ground of Nakoro until it turned dark and sticky beneath their feet. For a while, Eberu held their ground. They fought harder than before. Desperation gave them strength. Hope kept them standing. But numbers do not tire. Wave after wave, Dagana soldiers pressed forward. Eberu's lines broke. Men fell around the chest. The priests shouted, but their voices were swallowed by chaos. By the end of the day, 3,000 men lay dead across Nakoro from both camps. Eberu was shattered. The unthinkable happened. The chest of dominion was taken. Open and Hinian fell beside it, their blood mixing with the dust. The survivors ran. A lone runner fled the battlefield. He tore his clothes. He covered his head with dust. He ran through the night, into the villages, into the sacred city. People saw him and began to cry even before he spoke. The old chief priest sat by the road, waiting. "What has happened?" he asked. The man answered in broken words. "The army is gone. Open and Hinian are dead. The chest is taken." At those words, the old priest fell backward and died. That same day, a pregnant woman heard the news. Her husband was dead. Her land was lost. The chest was gone. She immediately fell into labor and named her child Losklo. In their land, Losklo was a name associated with bitterness and sorrow. The Dagana army marched back triumphantly across Nakoro. The chest of dominion was carried at the front, wrapped in fine cloth, guarded by their strongest warriors. Soldiers cheered. Drums rolled. Their commanders smiled. They believed their victory was complete. The chest was placed in the grand hall of Dagana's temple, beside the idol of Oga, their god of war. They set it down carefully, mocking it with their chants. "See," one said. "Their power is ours now. Nothing can stand before us." The priests of Dagana laughed. They pushed the chest closer to Daga's feet. "Let your god bow down before ours," they mocked. That night, the city of Dagana was quiet, at first. But when the sun rose, something strange was seen. The idol of Oga, tall and bronze, had fallen from its pedestal. Its head and arms were broken, strewn across the temple floor. Only the torso remained, standing awkwardly. Soldiers gasped. Priests whispered prayers they didn't understand. "What trick is this?" one priest shouted. "It cannot be," said another. Yet it had happened, and no one could explain how. The next days were worse. A strange sickness spread through the city. Tumors appeared on men, young and old. Rats swarmed the streets, from ships along the river and from the forests beyond. They gnawed on grain, on wood, even on fallen armor. Fear gripped Dagana. Soldiers refused to eat. Families locked doors. The priests argued. "Perhaps the chest carries a curse," one said. "No," another replied. "This is the power of their ancestors. Their God walks still, even in our lands." The city grew quiet with panic. Death came slowly to some, painfully to others. Screams echoed in the streets, mixing with prayers and cries. The Dagana leaders decided the chest must move. Iboma was the first city it touched. They could not keep it. They took it to Tamal, hoping to escape its influence. But everywhere it went, the same happened. Tumors appeared. Rats everywhere. Great fear gripped the people. Even when they sent it to Nekin, soldiers and citizens shouted in terror. "You will kill us all if you bring that chest here." The chest was no longer just a piece of wood and metal. It was alive with power, a force that could not be contained, ignored, or defeated. Back in Eberu, the survivors wept. Families mourned. The chief priest was gone. Open and Hinian were dead. The plains of Nakoro were lost. Yet, even in despair, hope flickered in whispers. Some said, "The chest is still ours, they just do not know it yet." Others murmured prayers, calling on the strength that had never left Eberu, the unseen power that had walked with ancestors in battle. Though Dagana had claimed victory, the real war, the war of unseen power, was only beginning. Across the lands, the story spread like wind. In villages and fields, parents told children the tale of Eberu and Dagana, of bravery and defeat, and of the chest that could not be conquered. This was no longer a story of soldiers and swords. It was a story of legacy, respect, and the unseen forces that guide the world. The war on the battlefield was over. Dagana had won in numbers. But the true power of the chest had begun to act. Across the land, the story spread like wind. The people of Eberu heard of the strange events happening in Dagana. The chest moved from city to city, bringing fear and sickness wherever it went. Even in Dagano, chaos reigned. Farmers, merchants, and leaders alike whispered nervously. The chest had become too heavy to hold, and no village or province could endure its power. The Dagana elders finally decided, it must be returned to Eberu. The chest was carried carefully by Dagana warriors, moving slowly across the border toward Eberu. When it reached the banks of the river Luma, a farmer spotted it resting on the grass by the water. He ran to the closest village, shouting the news. Villagers came to see, and they realized immediately that they could not keep it. "We cannot harbor this here," the village elder said. "It is not meant for us," another added. A messenger was sent to the priests of Eberu. They arrived swiftly, carrying authority and reverence. Together, they lifted the chest of dominion and brought it back to its rightful place in Eberu, where it could rest safely under the care of the sacred city's priests. The land of Eberu seemed to breathe again. Families reunited, farmers returned to their fields, and children played near the rivers. The plains and forests were no longer filled with fear. The priests placed the chest in its proper place, under the watch of those chosen to guard it. And so the story spread far and wide, even till today.